Here is picture again of Miss All Sunday. She is one hot mama, I think, especially with the cowboy hat. It just does it for me. If you like this drawing, remember to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more. One Piece Chapter 116. Big.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, and expected at this point, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the tantalizing tale of One Piece. Our last chapter left us with the Straw Hats, of course, reaching Little Garden Island, and everybody kind of splitting off. Zoro and Sanji went on a sort of contest to see who could bag the biggest game and bring back for food. Nami and Usopp stayed on the ship. Of course, they're waiting for the log post to reset to get to the next island. Vivi, along with Carue and Luffy, kind of went off exploring the island. We found out that there was, it's a prehistoric island, there's some dinosaurs on there, and we're left at the end of the chapter seeing the lumbering, just kind of, I guess, shadow of a large giant, I guess you would say it is. And of course, Nami says she finds a book about Little Garden and says that it's called Little Garden because its inhabitants, everything is little to it. It's like a place of giants. So that's where we leave off. That's where we begin. We see a couple of brief pages with Zoro and Sanji, and they pretty much, they encounter, Sanji encounters what looks like maybe a T-Rex or an Allosaurus, something like that. And then we see, and they're, of course, they're kind of baffled by these dinosaurs, and Zoro winds up seeing a Triceratops, and he's like, I wonder if that's edible. So we're then gone, and we're taken over to the ship to where Usopp and Nami are, and we're introduced almost immediately to Broggy the giant. He's asking them if they have any ale, and they say, well, yeah, we have a little, and of course he's gigantic. I mean, he's 10 times the size of their ship. I mean, he's enormous. And then all of a sudden he kind of like lunges forward and sort of like roars at them, and they're like, what the? And you see that he actually got bit in the ass, it looks like, from a dinosaur, from a T-Rex. So he goes and turns and in one fell swoop takes his axe and just lops the head off of the T-Rex, right? I'm thinking, okay, all right. So then he goes and he holds up, he's got the head, he's like, I've got meat. You'll be my guests, and well, I haven't had guests, I haven't seen humans in a while, we'll have some meat, right? So then we go and we're taken to the forest or another part of the island where Vivi, when we last saw her, and Luffy was kind of playing on a Dilophosaurus, or not a Dilophosaurus, a Brachiosaurus, a long-necked dinosaur, a Brontosaurus. And he's playing around, sitting on its head, and she's like, you got to be careful. These things are still, these huge, beastly creatures. And he's like, don't worry, this one's only interested in eating plants, right? He's talking about some caves he can see from up there, and then all of a sudden, he gets swallowed, and she's like, oh my god. So no sooner does he get swallowed than all of a sudden, and the theme of this one should be off with their heads, because all of a sudden, we see a sword go and lop this thing's head off. Luffy falls out of, because he still hasn't digested down the neck of this thing, Luffy goes and tumbles out of this thing, and then we are introduced to Dorry the giant, right? We find out very quickly from both sides of the things that they're both from the same village, and they're from the island of they're warriors from Elbaph, and that's basically what we wind up finding out. He goes and this giant, of course, is talking about how he'll have them over to his place to eat, and basically, I guess they're just alone on the island. So other than these prehistoric monsters, so we're then going and we're kind of taken back to what's going on with Usopp and Nami, and Usopp and Nami are sitting there and they're just kind of like quivering. I mean, they already tried kind of playing dead on the ship as it was after the dinosaur got its head lopped off, and it was real comical because you can tell they're scared shitless, right? So they're sitting there, and he's gone. He's cooked up the T-Rex, the dinosaur, and he's like, "Here, eat. You have meat, And they're like, "No, we're not hungry." And they see, and they say, "Oh man, there's human skulls around here." So now they're even more scared, right? Because they're thinking this thing's gonna eat us, So Usopp's like, "Yeah, he's just trying to fatten us up because he hasn't had human meat in a while, right?" So Nami goes and asks him one of the significant things that I thought happened in the chapter over here, other than meeting these two giants, was Nami says, "Hey, Mr. Giant, I have a question to ask of you." And he says, "What is it, girl?" And she says, "How long does it take for a log post to, reset so obviously you can get to the next island?" And he goes, 1 year. And he goes, "So get comfortable, ha 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 ha," And you're like, oh man. And so And like I said, he winds up telling them as well that he's a warrior from Elbaph. And then it goes back to Dorry, and they're sitting there, and now it's completely a different story over there. Luffy, of course, will never turn down meat, so he has gone and taken them back to his little lair, his place where he is, and he goes and has the the Brachiosaurus cooked up there, and Luffy's munching up on it. He's like, oh, this is good, and then he mentions, I guess Luffy must have given him his pirate box lunch, and he says, oh, your pirate box lunch was good, a little small but good. And Vivi's just like, Jesus, they're like old friends. So Luffy goes and starts asking him a little bit about himself, and that's how he explains that basically he is here, because he says, aren't you from a village? And he says, I am from a village. He says, but basically the way it works is that when there's like a dispute or a problem or whatever, we let our god pretty much settle it, and what he does is whoever he sides with is the winner, the one that comes out on top, and the one that of course loses is I'm assuming killed or something like that. But basically their god lets it be known. So he was put on this island. He got into some trouble long ago and was put on this island, and it is facing another. So you would assume that it's Dorry and Broggy that are facing off with one another, both being giants and both being from Elbaph, right? So he goes and he explains. He says, except for we've been fighting for 100 years and nothing's been settled so far. And they're like, what? 100 years? And that's a long time. And he says, yeah, but we live 3 times longer than normal humans. Well, even if a normal human lives to 100 years old and you live to 300 years old, you spend a third of your life fighting. And I mean, and that's stretching it. I would say the average person lives 70 to 75 if you're lucky, So this guy's spent half his life fighting on an island. So and Vivi thinks that it's crazy, right? She's just like, this is nuts. Why have you guys been fighting for this long and nothing's gotten settled? It doesn't make any sense, So then all of a sudden a volcano erupts in the distance, and Luffy's like, oh, look, he sees this volcano erupting. So basically Dory's like, oh, I gotta go, we decided long ago that basically that would be like, that's almost like the dinner bell for them, the fight bell or what have you, the gong, if you will, because once the volcano goes off, him and the other giant, which we find out in the next page is Broggy, they basically, that they go and they tangle, they fight, and they've been doing this crap for 100 years now, right? So, so then Vivi's still just like, what? Why would you still? It doesn't even make any sense. What are you still fighting about? And Luffy goes and clamps his hand over her mouth, and he's just like, no, don't worry about it, because he's like, it's like a matter of honor type thing to him, it's a matter of principle. So then we see this big double-page spread of them fighting each other, and he's like, yeah, she's right, or he's right. We don't even know what we fight about anymore. It's been long forgotten what we're even fighting about because they've been fighting for so long, and you see them in this double-page spread kind of going at it and clashing, these two huge titans that are like the size of, I don't know, King Kong, something along those lines, 60, maybe 100 feet tall. They're huge, right? So that's pretty much how the chapter ends. We go and we see Luffy goes and all of a sudden you see kind of like him making these faces, and Vivi's like, what's the matter? And he's like, oh, too much. So the only thing I can assume is that maybe he ate too much because he was munching on the meat of the dinosaur and he's sick. I'm not really quite sure. But that is how the chapter ends. And ultimately, these are two pretty cool, colorful looking characters to be introduced to in the chapter. Always like a chapter where we pick up new characters, and overall thought that it was a lot of fun. So I guess the chapter question that I have is, and it's hard with some of these because I understand that everybody's far ahead and everything else, and there's so many people that just maybe they don't know, or they're just afraid there's going to be a spoiler or something. So I always do try to ask a question that can be answered without spoilers, but ultimately I've been trying to avoid a lot of the comments anyway, as much as I do enjoy interacting with you brothers and sisters, so I can avoid said spoilers. But I guess my question for this one is how long would you carry a grudge? Because I personally, I have been very stubborn and pig-headed at times, and I've carried a grudge on for probably months or even years. And then there's other times that I've just tried to find forgiveness in my heart and let things roll off my back and just say, you know what, let's agree to disagree, that sort of thing, and kind of adopt the philosophy that I have now, which is, hey, difference of opinion, that's fine, it's okay, So where do you weigh in on that? Do you hold grudges, and if so, for how long? Let me know, brothers and sisters, in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button, if you think that I deserve it. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to seeing what happens between Dorry and Broggy in the next one, Nation.
Remember, brothers and sisters, to share, subscribe, spread the word of the nation to others, and of course, if you like watching the videos, watching them is always much appreciated. Have a nice day.